Greetings all, and welcome back to another fun-filled and exciting episode of Chieftain Interviews a Random Person from YouTube. And I have found Jonathan Ferguson of Royal Armouries. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to have a chat. I mean, he took me on a very, very brief tour. It's kind of like, oh, you must have fun working here.
I can't complain. Yeah, my wife thinks that I play with guns all day, and you can sort of see why.
My kid does the same thing. He asks him, what does your daddy do? He says, tanks.
Succinct.
Right. So, I tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, I know you came up through the museum, archaeology and museum. How did you end up going from archaeology to current small arms?
Yeah, so I suppose growing up into all the sort of the boys' things, you know, planes, trains, automobiles, dinosaurs, weapons. My dad had a couple of books. I remember one of the Ian Hogg books, which had the EM2 on the cover.
Oh, okay.
So I was, in a way, it was one of the things I was very interested in. And then trying to sort of professionalize and get into old stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what I want to do, but I think it's going to be old stuff. I thought about paleontology, because dinosaurs were up there too. Archaeology is where I sort of gravitated toward. Mm-hmm. And I suppose in the course of completing my degree, I realized there's a lot of rain and mud involved, depending where you end up, you know.
Yeah. But generally speaking, archaeology does require digging things. Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, even more than I've had to do moving around the country or other countries, doing contract work, not great pay. And I thought, well, what I really love is the stuff that comes out of the ground or out of warehouses or whatever. Yeah. Let's do museums. Okay. So I converted effectively over to museums with a postgrad course and then had a series of jobs bouncing around the country before I very fortunately ended up here.
So let's explain the purpose then of what the Royal Armouries does, and then we're going to figure out how you slot into this. Yeah. So people think Royal Armouries, Leeds, big museum. What's the purpose of the organization other than being a museum?
Yeah, so we have a mission or vision on the internet you can look up, but my sort of broad take is, first of all, preserving, you know, like any museum. We have a specific remit where I may be wrong here, I think we're the only arms and armour museum, certainly in the UK, let's put it that way. Okay. Everything else has weapons in it, but is not dedicated to that subject matter. We're actually really niche. We're like the Railway Museum or the Tank Museum. Yeah. Quite specific. Obviously, tanks are way more complex in terms of the stuff that goes into them, including guns, which of course is partly why you're here. So it's... I've lost my thread, damn it. Sorry, we're doing so well.
No, what is the purpose of the museum? Correction, not of the museum, of Royal Armouries, of which the public museum is a component. Yeah,
well, I suppose it's our sort of narrow but very deep niche that gives us our purpose from my point of view. So we're here, I like to say, you know, we know this stuff so you don't have to. And if it's the government asking, you know, they probably don't need to know the detail. We're here to help whoever. Anyone from them all the way to researchers, which we help quite often. They often know more than we do about specific stuff, but we're here to keep, you know, hence my job title, keep, don't let them get away, preserve, interpret, learn about. So we, as much as possible, sit here and walk around and we learn about the stuff just like you do. And between us and all the researchers and collectors who do that as well, and they know more about individual things or swathes of the collection than we possibly can. We have over 27,000 firearms, 900-ish artillery pieces. I wish I could know it all, but I can't. So I try to specialize in small arms, and within that I try to sort of specialize 1800 to present, which is still a pretty broad swathe of history. And I'm personally maybe sort of rifles and pistols more than I am bigger stuff. But that's just me. I have a team of people here, a small team that work with me as well. But yeah, so we're here to know as much as possible, preserve as much as possible, collect actively. We actively collect, research about it, publish it, put on exhibitions about it, do YouTube videos about it. You know, I'm so fortunate that I get to do probably more research than ever currently because of those YouTube videos.
Because that's the problem I've had with a lot of other museum type staff, is that they have enough time on their hands just dealing, or not enough time on their hands, just dealing with running the collection, let alone have the time to go off and do YouTube videos or anything else like that. I mean, the Armoured Cavalry collection in Fort Benning, for example, started doing this for a while, and then stop because, well, folks like myself were doing it for free anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very much a first world problem, I think. But all the so we were doing media stuff obviously for decades. I'd done TV on and off for sort of 10 years before ending up on YouTube properly. It's additional to the day job. Yeah. So I am pretty flat out, and my colleagues will jump in and help me out sometimes, which is great, and good for their kind of career development as well. I think helping with presentation skills, research skills. It is a bit of a tension in a way between, although I think it can work together. Yeah. Which is we have our own academic journal in-house. Okay. On arms and armour in the scheme of things. Obviously we're famous for our armour and our edged weapons, maybe even more so than our guns. And I'm also associate editor of Armouries, which is small arms and light weapons, 1800 to present. Okay. So that two peer-reviewed academic outlets for research, and we try to funnel as much as we can through that. The way I see it working together is that we do a deeper dive as we can for YouTube, and then probably years later I'll come back and maybe do an article on it, or someone else will pick up what I've done and take it from there. Gotcha.
So obviously, Royal Armouries is more than just firearms. So you alluded to it that we think of an armory museum in the US. Well, the country's only 250 years old. We're in the firearms era end of. Yeah. So pretty much everything I've seen around here has been 20th century. Yeah. So is there another facility like this with matchlocks and flintlocks and blunderbusses and all that sort of stuff?
There is, yes. So typically what you'll see, and some of the people will see our videos of all the cool stuff that I guess inherently I'm biased toward the relatively later stuff, and obviously firearms. Okay. So they'll see that and they'll come here, which is great. We love you to come to the museum here in Leeds or at Fort Nelson, or even the stuff at the Tower of London, and they won't see too much of what we're putting out on YouTube. Yeah. That's semi-deliberate as well, because we want to provide some form of access to the stuff that's stored, not just to the stuff that ends up on display. We have managed to get First World War and Second World War out on display. It's the latest stuff that, be warned, for the moment, you're not going to see a huge amount of on display. The main museum is full of the more vintage firearms. We also have another facility with quite a few thousand more muzzle loaders, early breech loaders, but there are some. Well,
that's one of the great questions, though, any public museum has, is that are you curating to just, a 17-year-old school child and you're trying to give them a broad overview, or as a specialist museum, are you trying to cater to the specialists who really know what they're talking about? And I think it's always been a balance that musea have had an issue with.
It definitely has, and with the professionalization of the field, we have veered pretty hard over to the novice, the family audience, kids, people who don't know as much as we do about this stuff. And that's broadly a good thing, but it can leave the nerds a bit out in the cold. And speaking as one, I try to sort of cater to that audience as well. The videos are a great example of that. They were supposed to be 5 to 10 minute videos, quite surface level, as accessible as possible. Yeah. But what I think we've proven, at least on the internet, is that you can do these long, deep dives and bring people with you. And you try to pitch it to as many different audience types as you can. And at least in that format, I think museum display is a bit different. But at least in that format, people will gloss over the stuff they don't know, or they'll go and look it up, or you'll try and explain some of it. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, the other fun thing is that, the question I'm going to ask you in a moment is, of the 27,000 or whatever items in this particular building, how do you choose which one you're actually going to do the video on? In my case, one of the things I love about actually manipulating a tank, getting into a tank, is I learned so much more by having the physical object in front of me or around me than I could ever possibly do by looking at photographs in books or going to Wikipedia articles or anything else like that, because it's always a case of, they did this for a reason. Mm-hmm. Now let's see if I can actually figure out by doing things what that reason was. Yep.
Absolutely, completely agree with that. It's glaring when academic historians have not engaged with not always, it's not always necessary, but sometimes you'll catch errors in otherwise peer-reviewed work where guys just come somewhere.
Yeah, because the peers don't know any better either, unless they physically come here.
Correct. Yeah. So you need all of it. You can't just focus on the objects. Same with archaeology. You can't just look at the archaeology. You've got to do desktop research on what the history of the site is and all the rest of it. Even if that's not your job, someone else needs to come on board and do that bit. We are essentially material culture as a subject for firearms, edged weapons, armor, and we have one self-propelled gun.
And that's down in Fort Nelson?
That's down at Fort Nelson, yeah.
All right. So how do you choose? You're wandering around, and we got this whole rack of weapons here, most of which I can't recognize. How do you choose which one you're going to spend the time to do the research on and then film?
Excellent question. Funnily enough, I think just taking the time, as I sometimes have time to do, to sort of smell the proverbial roses, walk up and down racks, remind myself of stuff I've looked at, look at stuff I've never looked at, would be the ideal way to do it. I don't really have time to do that for its own sake. So typically, my version of that is walking around with guys like you who are coming here to visit, and you asking, "What's this?" And I go, "I don't know." Never looked at that in my life, and I do, and I go down the rabbit hole and I do the video. The biggest pressure is that time. So if we could, we were supposed to have a spreadsheet of what I'm going to do over the next X many months. Fell apart immediately. I can't. What I need to do, we film 4 videos in a sitting.
In a batch,
typically.
Yeah.
So I try and do maybe 2, one super deep dive perhaps, or 2 or 3 middling dives where I don't ever want to stop. I want to wait until I've got everything I think I can get for that individual gun. So that means by default, I'm trying to pick 1 or 2 about which I can't find out that much, at least for the moment.
Yeah.
I also try and crowbar in at least 1 more antique item per session because they just don't go very hard on YouTube.
No.
And I want to try and bring people over to that fold. It's an interesting sort of disconnect. There's the traditional arms and armor student, or scholar or whatever, or collector, notably. Within that, they will tend toward firearms, but there'll be a hard stop probably at the cartridge era.
Yeah.
And then on the firearms guys will typically pick up in the cartridge era or even later.
Yeah.
So I part of my remit, and by extension the Armouries remit, to go back to your earlier question, is I see us as trying to unify the fields. It's all arms and armour from the arms and armour perspective. From the firearms perspective, they're all tubes that go bang.
All right. So obviously, if you were going to talk about the concept of YouTube and people talking about guns, you got to talk about forgotten weapons as, absolutely, shall we say, the gold standard.
Definitely.
Well, not that I'm. Yeah, I was about to say a gold standard. How would you differentiate what you do from what Ian does?
That's something I struggled with early on. Because of course, guy sits in front of camera in front of a desk with a weird gun,
on top,
and by default, a lot of this stuff is weird, and the stuff that you might want us to tell you about the collection is tending towards similar territory to what Forgotten Weapons does. Right from the start, I'm thinking, I don't want to be seen to be copying Ian. I don't want him to think I'm copying him.
Yep.
That was alleviated by me voicing that to him and him going, "It's fine." Doesn't matter if you do the same gun.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he is absolutely fine with us copying him. We're still going to try not to. We have a much lower output in the scheme of things. He's doing, 4 videos a week?
He's doing, I think he's doing 6 all told.
Sorry,
because he's got his gun videos and he's got his range videos.
So way greater output across the piece. And then even guy sits in front of a table with gun, he's doing more of those than we are. He's having to travel to do that. So what I'm trying to do, and this is especially notable if it's something he has covered, because I don't want to just duplicate effort. If there's a particular angle, so British Trials is a great one to go for. We typically have the reams of information to look at, and I can give you something that he hasn't had time or the opportunity to dig out. If he asked me, I would give it to him, obviously, and just try and do something from a slightly different angle. Maybe we have a different variant. That's another thing. Or even if I'm just going to try and do a real deep dive on it that he hasn't had cause or time to do, then I'll do it that way. But I don't ever want to be Forgotten Weapons, and that's not because it isn't amazing. It is. I sort of see us almost between Forgotten Weapons and Sea and Arsenal. Those two, they're both fantastic channels. If you haven't subscribed to those, you should.
I've got so many hours in a day to subscribe to all the podcasts. And I mean, I was down at We Have Waste Fest over the last couple of days, which is a fantastic, I'll do another video on that, but a fantastic thing. And then I'm running across all these other people. I need to follow this podcast and this podcast and this podcast. You've just given me 30 hours worth a day of listening. Yep. You know, I have a day job.
Yes. Yes, that's something that I don't think, if I, as and when I drop a ball, we all do.
Yeah.
People are great about pointing that out in a polite, constructive way.
As long as they do it politely,
that's essential. It's a version of the sort of academic process. I'm absolutely for it. The occasional criticism makes me think, guys, I have a day job.
Yeah.
Not all of us are doing this just as our job. I dare say perhaps more errors will creep in. I don't know. As someone who values being as correct as possible, very, very much. I wouldn't say I'm an academic, but I play one.
But you're in that field, yeah.
I'm published academically and publicly as well. I want to be as right as possible, and I'm conscious that I am kind of pushing my limits sometimes as far as, and it's great. It's a great quandary to have. Maybe I don't get around to my emails right away because I'm going to focus on that bit of research, or maybe that has to wait. So this is all down to me and my personal admin, really.
So obviously for some of the larger contextual questions, I'm assuming that you're probably most familiar with British Army trials or selection processes. So as you're doing your research, have you found that the design and development of firearms for, again, we'll say the British Army because that's what you have, is it doctrinally led or is it technologically led? So for the tanks question, because there's so much effort and you got to ship the things, you got to sustain the things and so on. It's kind of, this is what we want the tank to do first. Now engineers go and figure out how to get this effect.
Yep.
Whereas I think of a firearm, it's quite simply, all you're doing is the most effective way of getting small metal object from here to there.
Yep.
And that becomes a purely technical question. So where is the balance in reality?
Interesting, and you're right. It is a balance. It's not one or the other. That strand you picked up on of we formulate a requirement, we perceive a gap, usually based on the last war, as you know. We come up with a requirement, we issue the requirement, that gets met either by the in-house guys at Enfield or whatever, or out to industry, depending on what it is, and that is that way of doing it. But I think you're right, and interesting to hear you say that about vehicles. On the firearms side, there's a ton of speculative, anticipatory research and development going on, both in-house at the, called different things at different times, but the design and development department at Enfield, and men in sheds, and places like BSA and Sterling, you name it. They are constantly trying to push, with an eye on the commercial market as well. You can't really sell tanks as readily. Well, no, that's not true. Commercial doesn't just mean civilian. I'm thinking more of civilian commercials. So spin-off products. People talk about, this is already controversial. It shouldn't be. The AR-15 designed as a military rifle. Now, from very early on, they had an idea of the civilian spin-off of that. That's completely true. Some people will say that civilian rifle came first.
I'm not tracking it, but there's this massive threat. A bloke on the range right now is on
I know.
He's hammering on something out there. It's going on the matter.
Yeah, what's the expression? Like a bull at a gate on that one. I chime in sometimes as well. But that's the reason I raise it is not just to create engagement in your comment section, although that will happen too. It's because that reflects that duality of we know that this is a portable weapon, as a personal weapon, or not a weapon, tool, will have an application
I'm an American. We can call it a weapon, and nobody cares in America because that's why I carry one. I don't carry it; it's decoration.
I don't know. I've had some arguments with people who don't like guns being called weapons, but anyway, and they were American. But
they're denying the obvious, unless it's a target rifle. I started off doing Olympic target shooting.
I would agree, but of course the same requirements that lead to lots of bits of metal that way being good for a military requirement also benefits
for civilian hunting.
So there's that cross-pollination. So they're always they're often, if you look at the patents that get produced, especially by the kind of gentlemen in sheds, going further back, and is they often have no idea of what they want it to do. They just want it to be a gun. Some of them are, well, I am the military is first and foremost, but maybe other people will want it, especially in going back in the day a bit in the UK, but the idea of service rifle competitions, obviously that doesn't continue to the present day with, say, SA-80s. But for a long time, it was the contemporary service weapon you were shooting. So it was strong in the civilian world, it was strong in the military world, it was arguably a military rifle or a sporting rifle.
You can look at countries like Switzerland, see, does that still happen? Because they still have their service rifle competitions. So presumably SIG or whoever is making the things in Switzerland these days has that matter in mind.
But I think my perception is that leads to more of a, how do I put this? You get that speculative strand. So you've got government putting out to their own arsenal and also to industry, and industry responding to that. But maybe even more so, you've got people trying to build a better mousetrap. And so much of this collection and the sort of stuff that Ian looks at as well around the world is failed attempts. One of the comments I've had is, you're determined to do down British small arms. You're saying they're all terrible. Well, first of all, I don't do that. Secondly, it's by
Some of them are.
It's by default. You have to make same with medical science. You have to make all of the mistakes in order to get the right solution.
Right.
And then you're even if you do it, great. It's mature technology.
Yeah.
The user, the consumer, whether that's the DOD or the MOD or a guy that wants to go and stalk deer, has to be accepting of that. Acceptance is something that's spoken about a lot now in defence procurement.
Yeah.
It can't just be fit for purpose. It has to also be accepted by the user.
And it can be denied just on economic grounds.
That as well.
It can do its job, it's just too
Sten guns.
expensive. So if for an environment, let's say I would assume the MOD does the doctrinal requirements first and then asks for bids either for, as you say, from Enfield or private industry. What rate of success do the organizations have at providing, just here we go, you ask for this specific doctrinal set, here is a gun, it does exactly what you want it to do. Do they still fail 3 times out of 4, or are they more likely,
I think there's a PhD in that one.
Okay.
I think I'd be wrong if I gave any sort of definitive answer, but I'd say the wastage, based on this collection, the stuff that's in here, something popped into my eye. I just mentioned Sten guns. SOE decided they wanted their own scratch-designed British submachine gun rather than just adopt Sten gun. So they came up with the Well gun, and that pretty much immediately fell by the wayside. So it could be one for every 10 makes it. It could be 50. I'd love to know the answer to that, and maybe by focusing too much on this collection, I'd get the wrong answer as well. But fascinating. It's way more fail than ever meet acceptance. Some things that don't meet military acceptance have an afterlife somewhere else. The ultimate version of that is probably stuff, and I won't mention what they are because I don't want to annoy any manufacturers, but there are certain modern firearms that really have never made it as a viable military weapon or even police weapon. But they're still in production and bought by civilians in their civilian form because of things like movies, video games. That's quite a new phenomenon, I think. But just because your intended market doesn't go for it doesn't mean that someone else won't. But I'd say, most of the stuff that I gravitate towards showing people, our series is called What's This Weapon? If it's just a number 4 Lee Enfield, it better be a really interesting variant. And we have this guessing game on social media as well. So usually a silhouette, and you have to guess what it is. If it's just a number 4, I'm cheating almost.
Do you have any weapons with specific provenance? So it's just a number 4, but it was carried by this Victoria Cross winner in Burma.
Exactly. So I will cheat sometimes. I can't think of any of those off the top of my head. But let's say we have an absolutely wonderful piece in the collection. I don't think I have covered, but other people have yet, which is just an AK. Albeit in the scheme of things, a rarer variant. Well, not that rare. They
only built 300,000 of them.
80k, I think, but it had, and some, I bleat about this a lot, so forgive me if anyone's heard this before, but Captain Gregory P. Dillon of the 1-7 Air Cavalry burned his name into the butt of this AK. And if he hadn't done that, we wouldn't know. It's classic. It's like there are many like it. This one is his.
This one is it.
And it's just that we have that whole story We know which battle it was captured in, what the circumstances were. We have a photo of him with his unit, and that's military history on an order of. There's a movie about that unit.
Yes.
So that's rare. There isn't much stuff in this collection that's like that in the scheme of things. Both the Royal Armouries and the Ministry of Defence Pattern Room, to which we owe a lot of what you're seeing, didn't collect on that basis.
Yeah.
So much. Not on the gun side.
They're a technical reference more than.
The MOD, definitely technical reference. The Royal Armouries, I mean, not that we didn't have stuff with a story. I might be a little unfair saying this, but it tended to be the stories of the rich and the powerful. So Henry VIII.
Well, especially 300 years ago,
yeah. When that plays into gun ownership and culture in these islands, and who tended to have guns and who didn't as well. It's not it's not a fault of the previous curators per se necessarily. And often by the time we get stuff, true then as now, that history's gone. So you can look at, and we all love to do this. We look at collectors or museum people. We look at something with dings and scrapes,
and you wonder how did they get there?
Where has it been? Yeah, and often we just don't know. One version of a story I do love to follow up and maybe fill in a bit of history, even if you can't identify an owner, which is not that common, is that trial stuff. We can identify stuff in this collection that was kept because it was a trials gun, and then you can show it fired this many rounds, it went through these trials, it contributed to this failure of this project or to this success of this project. So that, we always try and look for the human angle. That's very much the modern museum ethos. Is it's stories, personal stories, the human story. But you have a collection, a wonderful collection that tends toward the more technical. How do you bring it back around to the person? So we look at inventors, designers, makers, as well as, if we can, users.
Yeah. Okay, I'm putting you on the spot, one or two questions.
Okay.
we were talking about building a better mousetrap. What out of your 27,000 that you happen to have looked at and can remember?
Yes.
What is the best solution in search of a problem, or the weirdest solution in search of a problem?
I'm going to cheat slightly because we don't have it anymore because it was on loan.
Okay.
I'm going to say the G11. It's
the caseless one.
Yep.
Okay.
It's the most complex firearm or even weapon, I would say. I suppose you've got whole weapon systems, but a weapon as opposed to a system.
Yeah.
I can conceive of. It's certainly the most complex I've ever tried to get my head around. It's not even a gun. It's a machine for shooting bullets. That's how I think of it. It's just so complicated in every aspect.
Okay. Of the 27,000 guns that you have in your collection, but subtract those from the ones that are out there, what do you want?
Ooh.
What's on your shopping list?
Ironically, the answer could be the same, because we loaned that from another UK collection, thanks guys, if another opportunity to acquire one, even on longer term, 3-year rolling loan for us as a museum, I would jump at that. There are others, there are almost silly gaps, like the L98A2 cadet rifle.
Okay.
I was reminded this morning we don't have one. We have probably what must be the best collection of SA80s in the world.
Yeah, that's like a 22 version of it or something like that, isn't it?
It's full bore, 5.56, but semi-auto only.
No.
So we have the old kind of crazy bell crank version where they didn't trust cadets with semi-auto or full auto for that matter. Except cadet armories did have Bren guns until quite late on. But anyway, they kind of dialed it back a bit. We don't have that. So in a completeness, for the sake of having a complete collection that people can come and study, I kind of really want that. But there are many big gaps. A lot of modern Russian stuff. We'd love an AK-12. I guess we tend to.
Well, I suspect some of the modern stuff is going to start coming your way in the next few months after a quick stop off at an MOD evaluation facility.
We are hopeful of that on the modern side. Typically on the antique side, if we don't already have it, we're going to struggle to afford it. We did purchase a pistol belonging to James II about 5 years ago with some external funding.
Yeah, I was about to say, because you got a big sign out front saying free admission, yet acquiring stuff on the market costs pounds. Where do you get the money?
Yeah, and it's the same with the film and TV stuff, by the way. So we put together I think a reasonable kind of capsule collection of representative stuff from film and TV for a certain period of time. We look now at the prices for that. It's on the order of the antiques or even more. But so yeah, the problem. How do you fund it? So we are, I think it's 70% funded by grant in aid.
Okay.
So
So like from the government via the national lottery or that sort of thing, or?
Well, so the lottery fund is still a pot of money we can apply to get more money.
Okay.
And that's where actually how we funded a lot of that film and TV stuff. Thanks, guys. But the core funding is from the Department of Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. And that's true, of course, for the modern stuff as well, because although that was MOD, that's now us, and we are not. We are like an arm's length government-funded body.
So you actually have to buy the stuff off the MOD, at least at cost value?
It's not quite that bad, no.
Okay.
No, the MOD are good to us. We're sort of ex-trial stuff, ex-service weapons, although there are other kind of bureaucratic reasons why we tend to miss stuff there. That's no one's fault, but we have to work quite hard there, more so than the old MOD pattern ring collection used to do. Now, we don't have to pay for that, but we do have to pay for stuff at auction, purchase at private treaty, buy stuff from dealers.
Okay.
Sometimes that's ex-dealer samples, I mean, it's not the, well, I guess things like the Bren. We have a Bren 025 and 2 Bren 2s. Those are purchased on the basis that they are arriving with UK Section 5 dealers, just as they are in other parts of Europe, for onward sale to wherever. So they're available to us.
Yeah.
Stuff like, well, let's just say some interesting Australian things. That's a relationship we have to go through some people to get to the Aussies government side, get all the masses of paperwork.
I'm going to go to your catalogue now and look up Metal Storm.
No, not quite that.
Not that weird Aussie thing. Okay.
No. So there you're paying to get them here. They are very graciously gifting this stuff. Often it's cost price, as you say, but from a dealer. Sometimes from the manufacturer themselves, if they're able to ship direct. All these are first world problems. We have a great collection, but it's maybe not as straightforward as in the MOD days on the modern side, where you would, my perception is, and actually I know they put in a ton of work then as well, is more routinely. We have 3 military-themed collections in the UK, Warminster, Shrivenham, and now us, used to be the pattern room, and you'd sort of get one of each at each of those destinations.
Facilities, okay.
Those are closed collections for defence, kind of that government-type people. We are that as well, to some extent, but obviously we're open by appointment to researchers.
Okay.
Right? Serious researchers. We have to kind of show a bit of an audit trail that you are in fact a researcher. Something people ask.
So how did they let me in?
I don't think we'd have
What are your firearms qualifications? I'm qualified to shoot them?
I don't think we'll have any problem there. No, it's really to do with showing that you're not some sort of wrong-un, as we would say. So we'd say closed collection, open by appointment, and that's as true for the vintage stuff as it is for the modern stuff.
Right. So since you happen to have 27,000 generally functioning firearms, and I presume on occasion for reference purposes, maybe from the police, they'll ask you to shoot something, you presumably have a range.
We do.
What would you most like to shoot that you haven't found an excuse to shoot yet?
Oh God, I'm going to keep saying G11, aren't I?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm very sorry. It's very boring, but I would love to.
Okay, but you don't have it, so you got to pick something else.
No. I know of one firing at least, but yeah.
God knows where you get the ammo for it these days. It's like the gyrojet pistol. You don't have a gyrojet, do you?
We have 3 gyrojet pistols. We don't have the carbine, and the only round we have is spent. Sadly.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Is, once you fire the round, that's it. Where do you get a new one? Okay, so other than the G11 or the gyrojet.
Gyrojet would be fun. Any of the Russian/Soviet internally suppressed ammo pistols would be great to shoot. Again, we have some of those. We have spent rounds. We don't have live rounds. My real kind of bucket list thing that I haven't shot, as almost a class of weapon really, although it is a specific type, is a minigun.
You haven't shot one of those?
I haven't shot a minigun. I only recently shot on full auto 50 cal machine guns.
You're hanging around the wrong... You got to come over to our side of the water.
I know.
Between myself, Ian, and a few other guys, we can probably sort you out here.
I know. We're too polite to ask sometimes, but no, I've had some great opportunities to shoot stuff in the States. It's one of those things, you keep meaning to do it, something like Big Sandy, go and shoot some machine guns, and you go, I'll do it another time, and...
I can relate. It's kind of like, parts of Leeds, I want to go to do some touristing around here, or on the way up here, like Bletchley Park, I had to drive past Bletchley Park on the way up here. I don't have the time, I'll get it next time.
Exactly.
And there is no next time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Now that I've looked around and seen some of the other stuff that I wasn't prepared for you to have, maybe there's an excuse for me to come back to Leeds, but it's not normally at the top of my list of places that I'm going to go to from Texas.
No, which might lead us to another question of why we're in Leeds.
So, why are you in Leeds anyway? I mean, it's kind of like way up. Google Maps it if you don't know where it is, because frankly, I had to remind myself. I found it amusing. I'm driving up the M1. I'm seeing all these place names that I've heard of. And I said, "Oh, that's where that is."
Yeah.
So, how do you end up here? Where's Enfield?
Enfield is either Middlesex or North London, depending on.
So that's not near here either. So you don't even have the geographic.
No.
Okay, all right.
Depending what your DeLorean GPS is set to, it's in different counties. But and Nottingham, the Nottingham Small Arms Facility, which exists still as an office of HK,
Okay.
is much closer to us, but still not Leeds. No, this is to do with the museum side, and so we were at the Tower of London from almost the beginning. I mean, when is it? The keeper of the Privy Wardrobe is the first position where we can say wardrobe includes armour. So, therefore, that is my furthest predecessor that,
okay.
that exists.
So, and privy basically means part of the royal court?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where we can identify on site at the Tower of London where there's some armour being kept by
under the command of somebody. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Under the responsibility of somebody.
That's how we push that back to 1300 and something.
Right.
Obviously, it's like a spectrum of development.
Do you have on the wall photos of pictures, paintings,
We should
line drawings of every one that you can
We
find?
should do that. Now, presumably he is not my direct predecessor. So keepers-wise, we have me on the firearms and artillery side.
Okay.
I'm not an artillery specialist, but I'm responsible for it. We have my good friend Henry, who is edge weapons and armour.
Okay.
And we have our senior keeper, Emma, who is keeper of tower history.
Okay.
So she would be the direct descendant of that position.
Okay.
I guess. So that site develops essentially into a museum by osmosis.
Yes.
You know, the more stuff you keep to issue out to the armies plural if you go far enough back, the more you end up with old stuff that's weird and interesting. They do experimental stuff at the tower, like flintlock rocket launchers off the top of my head, for example. Some of that stuff stays there. You capture stuff from your defeated enemies, so there's piles of French breastplates for some reason. All that stuff, and suddenly it's interesting for people to look around. And you get sometime in the 1500s, you get people, usually with a bit of money to travel, of course, and a bit of prestige to get let in, like a private collection, and then eventually they throw the doors open and say, well, that's a museum, in you come. Different story with the pattern room. That was very much always a closed thing for the use of the authorities. So we are now both.
All right, so the pattern room was located in Leeds. Why though? Was it just was it just because it was secure? It was inland.
I haven't stuck the landing there, have I?
Yeah, no.
Sorry. The pattern room. The pattern room moved with the manufacturing. So the manufacturing was at the tower.
Yeah.
Then it moved to Enfield, where the pattern room. What was the pattern room relocated there? We don't know much about that here.
And at this point, we are talking firearms now.
We're talking firearms, edged weapons, and armour. The pattern room for arms and armour.
Okay, so maybe I have a misunderstanding of what a pattern room is. So I think of a pattern room, I think of a place where things are designed as a development, and they create this thing, and it becomes the pattern for the actual production. This is or is not. Okay, sort of.
It's co-located. So when it was at the tower, it was somewhere on the grounds, and there was an armoury where they were setting up muskets, and the two sort of worked together.
Okay.
The actual steel patterns would have been stored with somewhere, and there was a big fire in 1841. We lost a ton of stuff, but they would have been stored in the same areas, we presume, with their nice wax labels. You can look up online if you're interested. And you're right, they are for controlling manufacture.
Okay.
This is the one from which you will make all the others. Before we have drawings and CAD packages and whatever. That then moves with the manufacturing capability from 1816 onwards. It's a process to Enfield, now in North London.
Okay.
So the pattern room becomes a thing and a private collection at Enfield.
Okay.
In 1988, after the SA-80 kind of debacle and governments closing down industry generally, that then relocates to a new facility in Nottingham.
Okay.
And then after not many years, in 2001, that gets closed down as well. The pattern room is homeless. We're the only game in town for taking the whole collection.
Just because this building was available, or?
Meantime, we've already moved to Leeds. So our HQ has moved from a department of the Tower of London.
Yeah.
We're created as a museum in our own right in 1983.
Yeah.
And then that is a museum from that central white tower. All the arms and armour you see there is still ours. But as an HQ, we moved up to Leeds to create a museum of arms and armour for anyone and everyone to come and see. That's why we're in Leeds.
But why did they choose Leeds? Of all the places that I'm going to have to drive 4 hours north. Okay.
I believe, this is my understanding, primarily money. Sheffield was looked at, Birmingham was looked at. Sheffield known for its steel and its knife making and bayonet making, importantly. Birmingham, obviously, the northern hub of gun making, one of the biggest gun making hubs ever. Yeah. Comparable to sort of Liège in Belgium. So that it's kind of by default that the museum in '96 has opened in Leeds. Therefore, some years later, when the pattern room collection's up for grabs, it has to come to Leeds, and there was space for it here as well. There wouldn't have been space at the Tower of London. Historic Royal Palaces would have had a coronary if we'd asked. Do you mind if we just put these 18,000 extra guns somewhere in your back room? No, it's not going to happen.
Fair enough. All right, so what does Jonathan Ferguson do when he's not surrounded by firearms? He goes home, he plays video games and starts freaking out over the guns?
That's part of it, yeah. Games, films, all the mass media stuff that a lot of us enjoy. I have a really bad habit of taking my work, not literally home with me. Yeah. Most of that would be illegal.
The police might have an issue with that, all right.
But yeah, I will... I try, in my head, my wife may disagree, but in my head there's a difference between stuff I have to do and stuff I want to do. Yeah. And I'm very fortunate that they overlap a lot at work, but I will do research in my own time. That won't necessarily be on guns. So I'm just fascinated by history and all sorts of subjects. So in lockdown, I wrote an article about plague doctors. Okay. The equipment of plague doctors. So I do a lot of informal research for fun, because I'm sad and nerdy. I go out and ride my gravel bike. We go and visit zoos and travel abroad, and we do sensible non-gun things as well. Yeah. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I do a lot of gun stuff at home as well. What I don't do, and this is absolutely well, in my head, for the sake of my poor long-suffering wife, is I don't spend my weekend out shooting. Okay. I'm very fortunate that I get to occasionally shoot some very interesting things as part of this job. So I don't feel the pull to go and do that. So I shoot more than most museum people who deal with guns would, and I won't completely embarrass myself, at least not with handguns. Maybe more so with other stuff. But I sort of leave it there, so I get infrequent practice, which leads to some not ideal results, I guess, on the range. But I don't join a club and go out there and do that as a hobby. That's my concession to not just all guns all the time.
Fair. All right, so I think we're going to come to a close shortly. I'm going to circle back to YouTube with a couple other YouTube-ish related questions. Oftentimes, musea, especially government-related musea, are extremely conservative. And I presume when you propped up with somebody and said, hey, I want to start doing things on behalf of Royal Armouries on YouTube, there may have been some resistance, or was there not?
Interesting question. And so, weirdly, no. Okay. Not yet. In fact, I've had way more people on the sort of authority side of things congratulate us on what we're doing. I can't think of, I say way more, I can't think of anyone that has raised a concern. So we are under the auspices of...
did you ask permission first, or did you just put out a video and hope that nobody yelled at you?
Well, so this I think comes back to something, and this is going to create unlimited, do you have a license for that comment in the comment section? But yes, we do have a license for that. It's called the Museum Firearms License, and it says, for the purposes of a museum, I'm paraphrasing for this bit, do what you like. Yeah. So that's museum displays, demonstrations. We have Rich Fisher and the guys at the Vickers Machine Gun.
No, I wasn't even thinking on the legal side. Just on the as a respectable museum, we should not devolve ourselves to expert reacts to that. We should not even devolve ourselves into the internet world, because a real museum is something that you come up and you look at the artifacts and so on.
I see what you mean.
Don't get me. There are some like the Tank Museum. Yeah, well, I would think so as well. But
as in, if you've got kind of onerous oversight from people who don't want you doing stuff from a legal basis, that kind of
the legal side of things, the license, that didn't even occur to me. It's just I have come across musea that just don't like the idea of being online because it's not part of their culture.
So you're thinking more internal?
Yes.
Yeah, so no, I'd say still no. We had some false starts where we just kind of bimbled around the collection with a camera in a very amateur way, and people decided that was maybe too amateur, and we need more of a reason, a focus, some kind of interpretation plan, basically, to come up with an approach.
Yeah.
So attempts to do things like See and Arsenal have been doing so well on already up to that point kind of fell, but not because we didn't want to do the internet stuff. My colleagues in the interpretation team absolutely did, and education, people like that. They did want to do that stuff. It's just, how do you engage with the technical? Because we do still include a fair bit of technical stuff. As much as we try to humanize it, it's going to be a bit nerdy and technical. And that's where, I guess, I won't say resistance, but that's where we had to find our feet. And like a lot of people, we found them by accident due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that was a case of, people can't come to our museum. All we've got is our website and our social media platforms. I guess you better do those YouTube videos then.
Yeah.
Which, and I absolute credit to the guys at EXP, Expert Reacts, who blazed the trail there by initially visiting us just like BBC or History Channel have or would, and trying to do little documentaries about the guns you've seen in the game. And they were stymied by the pandemic. We were as well. And they came to us and went, what if you joined our Expert React series and came back? And I was so desperate to come back in. I was jumping at the chance. And I dare say that is what got us over the line with, okay, you can kind of design your own approach to how this works, because we can't do that ourselves. Otherwise, we might have been waiting for that perfect solution to how we do guns on YouTube. Because absolutely, it could be seen as glorifying, trivializing. I have never seen any complaint, internal, external, from because our channel is general. We still have content that's not about guns. You'll see people say, not really for me, I'm more of a jousting person or whatever. I don't think I've ever seen get this terrible, horrible gun content off your
channel.
Traditional Arms and Armour channel. Everyone is very sort of accepting, I think.
So, do you have any
very long-winded answer?
No, it's fair. Do you have any words of wisdom for some other museum staff that might be looking at following into the YouTube space? Lessons learned that you learned the hard way that you want to be helpful and help them out.
I mean, don't rely on a broken webcam for 2 years. But I did try not to be fair. Just the general sort of inertia of a large organisation, pots of money being under different people's control. That posed us a problem. So I'd say, as much as we ended up sort of doing it by default, if you're trying to plan it, I'd probably get as many people bought in as early as possible and say, look, we really want to do this. How can we make that happen? And be a team about it.
Would you recommend just trying to figure out the camera and editing yourselves, or would you recommend hiring out somebody from the outside if you had the budget to do it?
So
within limits.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you're set up. Museums are different. We're a national. We have our own team for filming and sound editing and everything editing.
Oh, okay. You do have some advantages then.
Yeah, we do. Team of 2 at the moment. Has been as many as 3 in the past. That solves a lot of problems that self-starters on YouTube and small museums, trust-run museums, which wouldn't have that. But I wouldn't say by any means don't let that hold you back. Or my comments about broken webcams. It's easier now, I think, to get halfway decent kit to just sit. If you have the ability to go ahead and do something, and it's something you're passionate about and you want to talk about from a collection, get permission, but just do it. If you can just do it, and you'll learn and grow. And people aren't going to worry that you're not AAA quality right out the gate. They're just not. I know I never have.
No, especially not the enthusiasts. The enthusiasts are more worried about the information than the flashy graphics.
Information and looking at cool stuff. Yeah. So don't overthink it. It would be my so because we kind of did. We tried to do it in various ways and it didn't go anywhere. And then exigent circumstances allowed us to do it very freeform. So I'd say if you can do it under your own kind of control, do it. If you can't, get everyone we need to sign off in the room and say, look, show them something exciting. Walk them around your collection. Talk to them about why you think that thing is important.
Gotcha.
Sell them on it, and then they're likely to go, yeah, okay, we'll let you talk for half an hour this time.
All right. Last question. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think you want to put out?
I don't think so. No, I think we've been quite comprehensive.
All right, there we go. Easy as. Well, in that case, John, I appreciate very much the time you've taken out of your morning. Busy as he said several times how busy this man is, and he's been standing here yakking with me for the last 45 minutes, and we've already done an hour wandering around looking for Madsen machine guns. All right, well, thank you again, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks so much for coming. Great to meet you finally.
And yourself.